Alright guys, welcome to this page of the notes, and we're going to continue with this idea of simplifying rational expressions, but I really want to kind of drive home this point that sometimes you're going to need to factor a -1 out. And we'll see how that sort of shows up here as we begin to factor, and we get really close to a factor canceling top and bottom, but the signs are just off. And factoring out a -1 will help. So let's jump right into these and you'll see how these are going to go. Let me slide this over a little bit. There we go. Now we can pretty clearly see what's going on. I take a look at the numerator and I recognize right away, hey, I have a GCF of z squared. So I'll pull that out, z squared. That's going to leave me with a w minus 1 left over after I factor out those z squareds. In the bottom, really easily, I can tell z cubed. So I pull out a z cubed, and that's going to leave me with a 1 minus w. And there it is, right? I have a w minus 1, I have a 1 minus w. Those don't cancel because the signs are different, but if I could just get those signs to switch, they'll cancel. Hence, we factor out that -1. So that's exactly what I'll do. I'll pull a negative out. That gives me a negative z squared in the top, but now it is a 1 minus w. And in the bottom, that's z cubed, 1 minus w. They now cancel top and bottom. Move up here where you guys can see. That leaves me with a negative z squared over z cubed. I'm not done yet. 2 z's in the top, 3 z's in the bottom. There's two ways of thinking about this. You can either write z times z, z times z times z, and then cancel like terms top and bottom. 2 of the z's in the top will cancel with 2 of the z's in the bottom and leave you with a z. Or think about it as properties of exponents. I have the same base top and bottom, z and z, which means you subtract the exponents, right? 2 minus 3 is a -1. Take that guy to the bottom because you're not allowed to have negative exponents, and you either way wind up with just a z left over in the bottom. I'll do the canceling bit. The z squared in the top cancels with the z cubed in the bottom, leaving me with just a z. And so I have -1 over z, where z cannot be 0. Okay, so there'll be times when you're really close and factoring out a -1 will help get you the rest of the way there. Let's try another one of these. In this one, looks like I've got an x. I can factor out an x. So I pull out that x. It's going to leave me with a y minus 3. In the bottom, I can factor out an x squared. That's going to leave me with a 3 minus y. And there again we see it, right? Really close. The only difference is the sign. Pull out a negative. And it doesn't matter which one you pull the negative out of. I can pull the negative out of the top. I can pull the negative out of the bottom. Guys, it really doesn't matter. Just to, so you don't really kind of confuse yourself, I would always do the same thing. I like to pull the minus sign out of the one in the top, but you'll get the same answer. It doesn't matter where you pull the negative out of. So I'll pull the negative out of the one at the top like you've seen me do every time here. 3 minus y. Those guys now cancel. Leaves me negative x over x squared. Again, you're almost there, but we recognize that the x in the top will cancel with 1 of my x's in the bottom. And I'm left with -1 over x. Of course, where x cannot be 0. All right, so there's another one where all I had to do to get me the rest of the way there was just factor out that negative. Let's keep going. I got another one for you right here. Take a look at it, and I recognize I can pull out an x. I pull out that x. That's going to leave me with a 2 minus x. In the bottom, I can pull out a y. That's going to leave me with an x squared minus 4. Ooh, check this out. Again, we've seen this many times now in this chapter. Watch out for it. Difference of squares. X minus 2 x plus 2 is how that'll factor. Again, 2 minus x, x minus 2, really close, just the signs are wrong. Fine, pull a negative out of the top. Minus x gets me then an x plus 2, y, x minus 2, x plus 2, cancel, cancel, leaves me with a negative x all over y times x minus 2. Now, I need to find my restrictions. All right, in order to get the restrictions, I need y times x minus 2 to be equal to 0. The zero product property lets you split them up. Y equals 0, x minus 2 equals 0, so x is equal to 2. And here it is, negative x all over y times x minus 2, where y cannot equal 0 and x cannot equal a positive 2. This one's slightly different. We saw one of these before where I had two variables in the bottom and we wound up with an infinite number of restrictions, right? I showed you just 3 examples of what the value of w and a value of y that would get you 0 in the bottom, and there was actually an infinite number of them. This case, we get 2 variables, right? 2 variables in the bottom, but there's only one set of restrictions, and this one is different because of the multiplication here. If you go back to that previous one where I had a w and a y in the bottom, there was I believe it was addition in between the 2 terms, right? But now I've got multiplication in there, and so that zero product property changes things, and so I don't wind up with an infinite number of restrictions. I actually only have one set of restrictions. Y cannot be 0 and x cannot be 2, and that's because we wind up with multiplication here between those 2 variables. All right, guys, that takes care of this page of the notes. Head on over to the next page. I'll meet you guys there.